I want to start with something. I want to start with something that might sound a little different. I want to start with something that might sound a little different for a leadership podcast. I don't fully trust leaders. Start again. I want to start with something that might sound a little different for a leadership podcast. I don't fully trust leaders who never limp. And I really don't mean a physical limp. I mean, if you've never had a season that humbled you, if you've never had to rebuild your confidence, if you've never had Start again. I want to start with something that might sound a little different for a leadership podcast. I don't fully trust leaders who never limp. And I don't mean a physical limp. I mean, if you're a leader and you've never had a season that humbled you, if you've never had to rebuild your confidence, if you've never failed in a way that forced you to get up and be honest with yourself and start again, then I'm not saying that you can't lead. I'm just saying I don't know if you've been tested enough yet to be the kind of leader that we need. Because the kind of leadership people actually need nowadays, the kind that holds up when the pressure hits, usually comes from someone who's been through something real. That limp you've been trying to hide, the weakness, the insecurity, the setback, the season you don't talk about. It might actually be the thing that makes you a stronger leader, not weaker, but stronger. And today, that's what we're talking about. Leading with a Limp, my first book. And we're going to talk about why your scars might be your superpower. Now, before I get into that, I just want to say welcome. For real. Welcome to episode 1 of the LeadershipDrSB. If you press play on this very first episode of this show, I want you to know that I don't take that lightly. You could be doing anything right now, especially it's being the first day of a brand new year, and you chose to spend these minutes with me. So thank you. Seriously. This podcast is a space for leaders who want to be powerful without being fake, strong without being cold, confident without pretending they never struggle. I really want this to feel like the kind of conversation that makes you sit up a little straighter and also breathe a little easier. And I ask a quick favor before we get started, especially if you're watching on YouTube, please click the subscribe to the channel button. It helps more than people realize. It's really like telling the algorithm, yeah, this is worth the time, this is worth putting in front of more people, and we're building something very powerful here. So I really appreciate that support in advance. Thank you. Now, also, because this is the very first episode, I wanted to give everyone a gift as a thank you who tuned in. I'm giving away a free PDF called The First 100 Days for Leaders. It's a practical guide for the first stretch when you step into leadership. Whether you're on a new manager career, a new team lead career, or a business owner, or even hiring your first team, or even someone stepping into a new season with new responsibilities. It's structured, but it's simple. It's action focused because I know motivation is great, but for me, structure is what changes outcomes. To get it, just request it by posting your email address in the comments. It's also in the description below. Take that part out. And one more thing, when you request the PDF, you'll also receive information on upcoming leadership programs that I'll be launching later on this year. So if you want the dates, the details, and how to join, requesting the PDF is the easiest way to get everything in one place. Again, if you want the PDF, all you have to do is comment below and you will be contacted. All right, let's get into what we really are here for. When I say lead with a limp, here's what I mean. A limp is the part of life, you that life touched. It's the place you compensate, the place you protect, the place that doesn't move like it used to because something happened, something changed it. It can come from a failure you still think about sometimes, a relationship that changed you, a season where you were broke, a season where you were lonely, a season where you were doing your best, but your best still didn't feel like it was enough or even good enough. For some people, a limp looks like overworking because rest makes you feel guilty. I suffer from that sometimes. For others, it looks like perfectionism because you're terrified of being judged. People gonna talk regardless either way. For others, it looks like people pleasing because you've learned somewhere along the journey that love had to be earned and it can't just be given. For others, it's control because chaos used to hurt and now control feels like safety. And if we're being honest, a lot of leaders limp. They just hide it with a title. They hide it with success. They hide it with being the strong one on the team. But here's the truth. Your limp isn't your shame. Your limp is proof you've been in the arena. And some of the most impactful leaders I've ever met weren't the flashiest people. They weren't always the loudest people. They weren't always the most polished. They were the deepest. You could feel it when they spoke. There was substance to what they were saying. There was steadiness. They didn't really have anything to prove. They could hold the pressure and still treat people with dignity. Could you imagine what a world we live in today if everybody did that? That kind of leadership is rare because our culture pushes this idea that leaders are supposed to be flawless, always confident, always certain, always winning, always good. But flawless leadership doesn't actually make strong teams. It makes fragile teams. Because I found when a leader pretends everything is always fine, the team learns to hide the truth. They hide the mistakes. They hide confusion. They hide conflict. They hide concerns. They stop speaking up early, and when they only speak up when things are already on fire. And then leadership becomes this exhausting game of image management instead of a culture of growth. So let me put this plainly. Your people don't need you perfect. Say that again. Your people don't need you perfect. They just need you trustworthy. They need you safe enough that they can tell the truth. They need you consistent enough that they can relax and do good work. They need you humble enough to admit when something isn't working. Because trust doesn't come from pretending you never struggle. Trust comes from showing people I know how to handle pressure without losing myself and without taking it out on you. That's a mouthful right there. That's leadership. Now, I want to make something really clear because people here be vulnerable and they take it to the wrong way. There's a difference between leading with a limp and bleeding on people. There's a difference between a scar and an open wound. And if you learn this, it'll save you a lot of pain. Here's the difference for your consideration. A scar is something you've processed. An open wound is something you're still bleeding from. A scar can say, that happened, it hurt, I learned. Here's what I took away from it. A wound says, that happened and I'm still drowning and I need this room to carry me. And listen, needing support is human. I'm not judging that at all because we all need that from time to time. But leadership requires you to be wise about where you process and where you teach. So I like to say it like this. Leaders don't dump. Leaders disclose. Dumping is uncontrolled. Disclosing is intentional. Dumping asks people to hold you up. Disclosing helps people level up. So here's a quick leadership gut check before you share something personal with your team. your audience, your staff, your community, anybody you lead, ask yourself, am I sharing this for comfort or am I sharing it to add value? Is this story still raw or is it ready? Will this make people feel safer or will it make them feel responsible for me? That's the difference between vulnerability that builds trust and vulnerability that can create instability. Now, why does all this matter? Because the thing you're most tempted to hide is often the thing that makes you the most helpful. Your scar becomes strength when you stop treating it like a secret and start treating it like training. And I know that sounds nice, but let's make it practical a little bit. I'm going to give you a simple framework you can use right now. It's easy to remember and it works whether you lead a business, a team, a ministry, a classroom, a family, anything. Because a lot of times I think that we don't think that classroom leadership and family leadership is leadership. It's called the Limp method. L, locate the limp. I, integrate the lesson. M, make it a method. P, pass it forward. Let's walk through it like we're in a coaching session. First, locate the limp. You can't lead what you won't name. So what's the thing you're compensating for? Take a moment, think about that. What's the pattern that keeps showing up? Maybe it's conflict, avoidance. You let things slide until it becomes bitter resentment. Maybe it's over-explaining. You're trying to convince people you belong when you were really made to stand out. But either way, I digress. Maybe it's perfectionism. You don't launch until it's right because right is right, but right never comes. Maybe it's control. You keep your hands on everything because delegating feels like risk. Maybe it's being overly tough because you don't want to be hurt, so you lead with distance. If you're listening right now, I want you to do something simple. Just say it quietly. No pressure, no drama. Just be real with yourself. My limp is... Because naming it is power. I celebrate you for naming it. Second, integrate the limp. Your limp carries information. The question is, what did it teach you? And I don't mean that in a cheesy, everything happens for a reason, kind of way. I mean in a very grounded and intentional way. What did you learn the hard way that comfort never would have taught you? Maybe you learned boundaries, which is so important. Maybe you learned discernment, which is equally important. Maybe you learned how to communicate. Maybe you learned patience. Maybe you learned how to rebuild after disappointment. Maybe you learned how to lead when you don't feel confident yet. This is important. You really don't have to romanticize what happened to you, but you can extract wisdom from it. So ask yourself, what did this season make me notice that other people miss? That's usually where your leadership edge is hiding. Thirdly, make it a method. This is where weakness turns into winning, because a lot of people get the lesson and then they keep living the same cycle. They have the same insight, but they don't build the structure. And structure is what protects you on the days when you're not at your best. So take the lesson and turn it into something repeatable, a system, a standard, a habit, a process. Let me give you examples. If your limp is conflict avoidance, your method might be, we address issues within 24 to 48 hours. We don't let things simmer. Imagine how many professional and personal conflicts could be dealt with like that. We use a feedback script. We do weekly check-ins so tension doesn't pile up. If your limp is perfectionism, your method might be version 1 by Friday. We ship, then we improve. We get feedback early. We don't confuse fear with standards. We've got to stop confusing fear with standards. If your limp is control, Your method might be clear delegation roles, ownership charts, weekly accountability conversations, a decision-making system so you don't have to personally improve everything. If your limp is people-pleasing, your method might be practicing no as a complete sentence. Moment of honesty, if I had learned that word a long time ago, whew. Set expectations in writing. Define your values so you stop living off approvals. This is what mature leaders do. They don't pretend they don't have weaknesses. They just simply build rails. They design a leadership life that can hold weight even on hard days. Now, the last part, pass it forward. This is where your limp becomes leadership. Because once you've named it, you've learned from it, and you built a structure around it, now you can help somebody else. And passing it forward doesn't mean telling everyone your entire life story. Sometimes it's one sentence. It sounds like, here's what I learned the hard way. Here's the mistake I made, so we don't make it again. Here's the standard in this culture, and here's why it matters. Here's how we handle pressure here. Here's what we do when we mess up, because people are going to mess up. And here's a leadership nugget for free. If the people you lead trust you with their mistakes, you got it made. Your scar becomes someone else's shortcut. Now, let's talk about how to do this without losing respect, because I know that's the fear for a lot of people now. A lot of leaders are like, if I'm honest, people won't respect me. But here's the truth. People don't lose respect when you show a scar. People lose respect when you show chaos with no accountability. So if you want to be real and still be respected, here are a few simple ways to communicate your limp like a leader. One of my favorites is what I call the I used to, now I statement. It's simple, it's clean, and it shows growth. I used to avoid hard conversations. Now I address them early because it protects relationships. I used to overwork to prove myself. Now I protect energy because I want to lead long term. Remember, leadership is a marathon, not a sprint. I used to take feedback personally. Now I separate feedback from identity. Feedback is a gift. Accept it as such. I used to wait for perfect. Now I move with excellence, not fear. That's vulnerability with authority. Another way to do this is to share decisions, not just feelings. Instead of I've been struggling, you can say, this is a challenge, so here's what we're going to do next. That kind of language creates safety. It creates direction because your team doesn't need to carry your emotions. They need clarity. And here's another line that really helps. Scars are for the stage. Wounds are for the circle. Meaning, share process lessons publicly. Process raw pain privately with the people who can truly hold you. That's not hiding, it's just wisdom. Too many times we want to, in our emphasis to be transparent, we want to bleed on everybody, even the people who didn't cut us. Now I want you to pause and make this really personal for a second, because I know somebody listening or watching this needs this. Some of you have been leading while secretly feeling like an imposter. You're doing the meetings, you're hitting the deadlines, you're showing up, but inside you're thinking, if they knew what I've been through, and if they knew what I still deal with, would they still trust me? And I clearly want you to hear me. You don't have to be flawless to be trusted. You have to be consistent. You have to be honest, and you have to be grounded. The leader who says, I don't know everything, but I'm committed to learning and I will not abandon the mission, that leader builds the trust of the people. The leader who can say I was wrong and here's what I'm changing, that leader builds trust. The leader who can say we're under pressure, but we're going to handle it with character, that leader builds trust. Now, let's do something practical right now. because I don't want this episode to just inspire you for 10 minutes and then you go back to the same patterns of behavior. If you can, grab a notebook. If you can't, just think it through with me. Pick one scar. Not your deepest trauma now. Not the most complicated thing. Just one lip you've had to work through. Now, answer these 3 questions. What happened? One sentence, just the facts. What did it teach you? What skill did it build? What truth did it reveal? How does this make you a better leader today? And I want you to be specific. Not I'm stronger, more like I set clearer expectations. I notice tension earlier. I don't panic when things go wrong. I'm more empathetic with people under pressure. I communicate more clearly. I protect culture on purpose. Now, here's the most important question. What system can you build so this lesson shows up in your leadership consistently? Because if you don't build a system, you'll just keep relearning the same lesson on a vicious cycle, and that's what happens sometime. And leadership gets exhausting when you keep repeating the same cycles. In fact, make that your resolution, your leadership resolution this year. You will not repeat the same cycles, because leadership becomes powerful when your lesson becomes structure. Now, quick reminder, because I want you to actually have tools in your hands after you listen to this and after you watch this. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the page. Don't forget to comment below if you're interested in the PDF, the free PDF copy, First 100 Days for Leaders. And like I said earlier, when you request it, you'll be sent additional information on leadership programs that will be launching throughout the year. Let me briefly tell you that this is going to be your best year ever. I'm excited about what your leadership journey is going to bring you. And so it is my hope that you will continue to join me and pop in, tell a friend, tell your colleagues at work. If you Google their Brain, I write a leadership article every month for Brains magazine. So all of that information is out there. I have several books on Amazon that talk about leadership. The first book that was Leading While Limping, and it started this leadership journey for me. And so that's where we are today. And we kind of walk through that a little bit. But I'm really excited about you coming to be with me and spending some time with me today. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And this is the Leadership Dr. SB signing off. Until next time.